Yo, 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 what is up, everyone? I'm Solar Wolf, this is Solar Wolf Plays, and as you guys can see today, we are on Input 6. Now, this is actually, a pre-recorded run that I did, as I'm doing a review for it today, so give me one moment. Okay, so, first issue that I did find with the game, and the only real issue I have with it is that I believe that the remotes are allowed to be placed anywhere on the map. The random generator that would randomly generate where they're placed has access to the entire map. Because through this entire run, guys, as you'll see, um, I had an impossible time finding remotes. I believe I found two in this run. Now, I've done about 60 runs just to see if I could cheese it enough to get it to put the remotes in places where they were easier for me to find. Could not. You see, I have it playing a no minigames run, as the minigames do add to the difficulty, and I was doing this to test where the remotes were going to appear. And as you can see, guys, we're already at the 13-minute mark. I haven't found a single remote yet. I've already been hassled by the bot once and a few other things. So, that's pretty normal. By now, there would have been, I believe, one or two would have popped up for the mini games by now, and I'm still not finding a remote. I love how the map looks. Like, this is an extremely beautifully built game. I just think that the only issue I find with it, and I'm just being realistic with it, guys, is that it was impossible for me to find the remotes. And so, throughout the entire playthrough here that you're watching, I found two. And I swear, I searched everywhere. Like, I have been all over these maps a bunch. Like, I know pretty much if it's going to spawn in an easy to find location, it's going to be somewhere where you're actually, surprisingly enough, easy to spot it. You can see it pretty easily. Otherwise, they spawn in areas where I haven't even been able to see them, let alone find them. Like, I do love the run mechanic where she runs up on you from behind. I love that. The last game that really was able to utilize that as a good scare moment. Like, see there, we found Input 1's remote. So we're now working through Input 2 at the moment. But I love the run mechanic. This is something that, it hasn't been done since FNAF 2, like Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And oh man, Foxy running up on your door is a scary thing. Well, having a robot maid run up behind you when you're not paying attention too much is another scary thing. And they did it well. I really, really like it. Again, I have such a problem with the placement of remotes. Just because I think they do have access to randomly generating all over their area, so that means that they could possibly or potentially spawn in places that the player can't reach. Oh, there's two. So we're now working Input 3, and now for the rest of the playthrough, I couldn't find a single remote. I'm just gonna say it, guys. For the rest of the playthrough, I was not able to find a single remote. That means for the remaining 11 and a half minutes, even with no mini games, I was not able to find them. Like I said, the only time I found three was my very first playthrough. So that's not good. But otherwise, the game itself is fantastic. I love the styling. I love that you're taking control of other robotic animatronic types, trying to find these remotes to seal the doors. I love the whole story behind what's going on and what happened. And so, like, the only thing that does seem to take away from it is the bizarre spawnings of the remotes and where they could or could not be. I think that what would greatly aid this game and make it a little more player-friendly for their less skilled players would definitely be to limit areas that it can spawn in for the remotes. Because some of these areas that the games, it's a big factory, man. Like, there are giant sewing room machines, there are giant factory machine rooms. And so there's just a lot of space where these remotes could spawn in, and if they're given complete random access, they're going to spawn everywhere. Like, they could spawn up potentially on top of the washing machines, they could spawn potentially on top of, a beam in the big factory area where you see the big rooms that have the huge overheads. Like, it could spawn in those places if we've got it set to just randomly spawning anywhere in the map. And so those, if they're not limited, should become so. I think that would be the best advice I can give to the dev to make the game a bit more player friendly. I do like that it's got multiple modes, so you can play it in Classic, which is pretty much the way the game is intended to play, which has all the mini games as well as all the interactions. You can play in a no mini games mode, which is what you're watching here, where you're not going to be affected by the mini games, but that does mean she is going to be a bit more active. I just want to point that out. So if you select no mini games, she's going to be a little bit more likely to want to run up on you or appear right in your vision and other things. And so you are definitely going to want to make certain that you keep attention of where she's going to pop in and keep your thumb ready. Now you will notice, guys, a few times in here, I almost walk right into her. And even just watching that was scary for me. So that's fun. Anyways. But otherwise, guys, I really love this game. I think it's fantastic. I love the size of each area. How each area kind of has its own kind of unique flair. Like when you're going through the Input1 area, this is all like sewing machines, clothing. You find like wigs, stuff like that. And so that leads you to believe that they were in production of these maidbots when the very first one, probably the prototype or whatever, which is what Input6 covers. Input6 is always going to be the input for the maid, which is why you can't control it. Which is also why you only have control of 5 others. And I'm not sure, but I would like to believe that these are also 5 other maids that are actually under control. And so she's basically attacking them to keep them from preventing her from getting out, I suppose. Or I don't really understand the concept of what that one's about. But I do believe they are being controlled from one of the creators of course, the maidbots. Which leads to a whole new discussion, which we will get into in a later video. But I believe we're walking around in other animatronic or robotic maids. And so I think that's just a really unique mechanic. That's something you haven't seen in video games ever before. So it really takes it to a new level. It does remind me area-wise and kind of layout of games like Case 2. For those of you who remember that one, Case Animatronics 2. That was a really well-built game. Even the original Case was very well done. And so... again, it took place in kind of an area similar to this and was, first person. But I really just love the look and the feel of the game. I like that it's got the monitor effects. You can turn those off, by the way. You can turn the monitor effects and monitor sounds off if there's something that becomes a bother to you visually or, auditorily. You can shut those off in the settings. So that's actually really cool, too. But again, like I said, the only thing I really honestly believe would do some good for this game was if there were, say, 5 or 10 set locations per area where the remote could spawn, where it's not overly obvious, but once you spot it, you spot it. You know it's there and you grab it. It would help the player a lot, if anything. Other than that, though, we had a great run-through for this one. Other than, I think that on several occasions I kind of upped my difficulty, as it does say in the warning at the beginning of the game that it has a ramping difficulty, or not at the warning, I believe it's actually at the pause menu. If you hit the pause menu, it comes up with game tips, and it tells you not to switch inputs too frequently. Which is something I started doing here closer to the end of the game because I started panicking because I could not, of course, find the remotes. Which leads me to believe they had spawned in places I couldn't reach. As, like I said, guys, you can see clearly, I have been quite clearly all over the place on these maps. And for input 3, 4, and 5, I could not find the remotes. I just could not find them. They were just non-existent in any area that I could see or reach. And as you can see, the more times I flip through, which is what I'm doing now, which isn't good, this is where I ramp my own difficulty, and this is where I ended up losing. And by ramping your own difficulty, that does mean she's going to be more active on you. And when you're not doing mini games, she's already pretty heftily active. She's definitely going to be out to get your ass. Pardon my language. But no, other than that, like I said, guys, I just really would recommend to the game dev that they set it for, 5 or so base locations where it can spawn randomly between each area. This would aid the player a lot because it's very hard to figure out where the heck some of those remotes are going to appear when they don't have a set location to randomly spawn into. And if it can randomly spawn on the map, which is what I'm suspecting currently is the problem, I would say in an update it to having 5 or 10 or so, depending on area, spawn points for it, where it can randomly spawn in any of those areas, where it's going to be down on ground level, eye level, where the player can see it if they come across it. And it's going to be in an area where it's a bit easier to find, as at some point, somebody's going to do the break the game thing. They're going to try and break the fourth wall of the game so they can get outside of bounds and find out what's going on and why they can't find the remotes. And that's going to point to them spawning in some pretty weird places, I'm afraid. So if they do have a set number of spawn locations, some help with locating them would be nice. And if they are given full random access, a barrier on where they're not allowed to spawn needs to be put into place so that they stay at least within the player's reach. That way they're not going to spawn on top of beams or things that are out of reach and sight where you can't see where they are because they spawned in a place the player can't reach. Those pretty much are my only advices for the game, because otherwise this is a beautiful game, you guys. Like, it frustrates the hell out of me, though. I could not have done a playthrough of this with, the full video thing where I was gaming for you guys. I could not have done that. This game frustrates me on a level that I have not seen since, Pogo Stuck. And I think I only played that ever once for the channel and raged so bad I just said, no, that's not going to be a thing. So, if you guys do want to see me play this, please understand and expect that there's going to be a lot of rage. Because this game got frustrating. But like I said, guys, the only real advice, and I know I keep repeating myself, but the only real advice I can give this game is to either put a limit on locations where the remotes can spawn in each area, or put a cap on where it can spawn as to out-of-sight locations, places the player can't reach, stuff like that. But other than that, guys, it's a great game. And like I said, for the next 11 minutes, I was going to sit there and not find another single remote. And as you can see, guys, I did not find another remote. I just did not. Like, I could not figure out for the life of me where the other remotes were. I didn't know. And, like, I couldn't see them. I'd been all over places repetitively at that point. Like, as you guys could see, I'm repetitively going over these areas that I've already been because I couldn't find the last 3 remotes. And I think at this point, I was already starting to think that they had spawned in places I couldn't reach and had given up realistically. But I was still trying. At the very least, you could try to look. But no, at this point, there was just no going back. I knew they were in places I couldn't reach or see. There were some places I had not yet been, and it's because I kept getting looped. I kept looping back around on myself, because where she'd interrupt me is a place that loops me, and so I'd get forgetful and lose track of what I'm doing. And that's realistically where this whole video pretty much ended for me. I ended up I wasn't mad at that point because I knew they had spawned in places where I couldn't find them. They had spawned in places where the player couldn't reach. And so I was just pretty much giving up. I do hope to see more of the areas opened up in this, or like a secondary storyline attached to it. because there's still a lot of area of the factory that you can see is closed off, and it would be really neat to see it get expanded. But that's just wishful thinking on my part, guys. That's just wishful thinking, because this isn't that kind of a game. If this were a survival crafting style game, you could turn it that way, but this isn't that kind of game, so unfortunately, there's just not going to be a lot for it. As you can see, time was up, guys. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. You guys have been absolutely amazing. I love your faces. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, smash that like down there for me. Throw that bell across your room if you have subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, do me a favor, please subscribe. It helps me grow, helps me get out to other people, and keeps bringing great content like this for you guys. And as always, I love your faces, guys. Bye!